I never was a really popular guy. I never got really good grades in school, but I somehow managed to get a perfect girlfriend who loves me a lot. Her name is Taylor, and she was the cutest girl ever. I even remembered the first time we met each other. It was at a house party I accidentally bumped into, making my drink go all over her clothes, and I helped her clean it up, and then we started dating. I liked how she did everything right down to the way she wrote her name and talked on the phone with her friends and family. But all that changed, and you all are probably wondering what happened to me and her, and I'll explain from the very start. It was a cold night in December, and me and Taylor were watching a Christmas movie. She always loved to watch Christmas movies before Christmas. As we were watching it, I noticed Taylor seemed to groan in pain every time she moved around on the couch, and it made me nervous. This had been going on for a few days, but whenever I asked her about it, she would tell me it was fine, or it was just a cramp, and I would believe her. That was my girlfriend. She would always think of others before herself. Even if she was the one in pain, she would care about the other person who was closest to her. "Honey, are you doing okay?" I asked, looking at Taylor with a worried look on my face. "I'm fine, Scott," she told me, smiling. But I could tell she wasn't. I knew why she was lying, because she didn't want me to get worried about her, but it was, and I couldn't hide it. I then told her we were going to the doctor, and then to my surprise, she begged me not to. But I told her we were going to a doctor, and she finally agreed. We both then got up and got dressed in nothing to fancy now. Boy of us had never been to the doctor. I didn't even go there when I was a kid. But Taylor's issue was keeping us both up at night. She may not have shown it, but I knew deep down inside she was in pain. As we were driving to the doctor, there's one in our town that stays open late. She asked me what was happening to her, and I honestly had no clue what was going on. When we got there, we both walked into the doctor's office. There wasn't anyone in there except for one young man. I told Taylor to go sit down, and I would go check her it. So we both went our different ways, and a few minutes later I sat next to her in the waiting room, and she smiled at me. 14 minutes later, the doctors called us back, and we got into an exam room. Taylor was sitting on a table, and the doctor asked what was going on. Taylor looked at me like, "You tell him, Scott." So I did explain the whole thing to the doctor the best way I could, and he nodded, like he understood it all. He then gave a full checkup for Taylor, and even did a few things I'm not sure doctors are supposed to do, but hey, he checked, and I was glad. "Well, you might have to go to the hospital and have them check it out there," the doctor said, sounding worried himself. "But we don't live anywhere near a hospital," Taylor said, taking the words out of my mouth. The doctor then smiled and reached into his pocket, handing me a business card, and said we could go to that hospital because it was only 10 minutes from here. I told him thank you and looked at the card as Taylor asked the doctor a few more questions, and this business card made me very uncomfortable. At the Happy National Hospital, we take pride in taking care of our clients because here your health matters to us. Their address and phone number were at the bottom of the card, but something about that saying made a lump swell up in my throat. Then Taylor was ready to go, so we said goodbye to the doctor and headed off to the Happy National Hospital as we were driving. I told Taylor about the funny feeling I had. She told me not to worry, that I was just stressed because of her. And she was right. Well, actually, she was only half right, but I didn't want to tell her that, so I just said, "Okay." After 5 minutes, we got to the hospital. We both looked outside of the window and saw it looked like a normal hospital, and that made me feel better. When we got into their waiting room, I noticed how clean it was, and I smiled when I walked up to the front desk, telling the lady what the problem with Taylor was. She told us to have a seat, and we did. Taylor asked me if this was a good idea, and I told her if the doctor thought it was a good idea, then yes, it was a good idea. And then we got called back, and immediately the nurses and main doctors went to work asking both of us what was going on with her. And Taylor told them everything that happened, and they nodded. Then they told me I had to wait until they were done. so I had to sit down in a different waiting room. It stunk. I mean, not stunk, but it was horrible. I couldn't be with Taylor to calm her down if she wanted to cry. And then I somehow managed to fall asleep in the hard plastic chair. A few hours later, I felt a light tap on my shoulder. I opened my eyes half, expecting to see Taylor. But it was a doctor, and she was holding a little clipboard and had a sweet smile on her face. "Well, sir, we found out what's wrong with your girlfriend. Would you like to hear it?" the lady asked, smiling. She then told me one of Taylor's kidneys were failing, and they needed to take it out at first. I was shocked that something like this could happen, but I then had the big question pop into my mind. "How long will it take for you guys to fix it, or help her?" I asked, sitting up in the chair. She told me a few days, maybe even a few weeks, and I was scared thinking about Taylor spending a few weeks in a hospital all by herself. And then the lady seemed to see the worry on my face too, because she told me when the thing was done, they would call me. And I actually nodded and then stood up. I asked to see Taylor, and then I was led into the room where she was. I told her everything, the lady to me, and she said I could leave if I wanted to. And for some reason I did. I came back to our house, and then I sighed softly as I threw myself on the couch. I felt like I made a mistake coming back home without her. It was like a piece of me was torn out of my body. I noticed that the first few days that she wasn't here were awesome. I didn't have her bossing me around or anything, but then I kicked in. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And when I ate dinner, it was usually takeout, because I didn't know how to cook. And as you can imagine, me and Taylor sleep together. So it was even harder feeling the space in the bed where my girlfriend usually slept. Then it happened. I was eating some food when my phone rang, confused. I picked it up, asking who this was. It was someone from the Happy National Hospital telling me that Taylor was now ready to come home, and I wanted to cry out in joy. I told the person I would be there in a few minutes to pick her up, so I hung up the phone and grabbed the car keys, running out of the house and getting into the car. I drove as fast as the speed limit would let me. I was happy to have another person in the house again, and when I got there, I stopped in front of the hospital. And then the doors opened, and I saw Taylor sitting in a wheelchair while someone was pushing her. But before they got to the car, I noticed the person lean over and whisper something in Taylor's ear. And she nodded. I was confused, wondering what that had been all about. But then my happiness took over when they got to the car, and the guy helping her opened the door. "Here she is, sir, good as new," he said, grinning at me. He then helped her into the car from the wheelchair. I asked if we needed that, and he said no, she would be fit in a day. Then, before he shut the door, I saw him mouth "remember" to Taylor, and she nodded before closing the door, and we both drove off back to the house, and that feeling hit my throat, the giant lump feeling. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just nodded, not speaking a word, but I nodded too, and then we got home. I asked if she needed any help, and she said she got it. When got into the house, she asked me if I wanted to see her scar, and I shrugged, thinking what not, so she showed me. It was pretty big and nasty looking. I touched it, feeling the stitches that were where her kidney used to be, and my mouth fell open in shock. I then asked her if she wanted something to eat, and she told me no. Not right now, telling me she was going to bed, before kissing me on the cheek and heading off. I rubbed my cheek. Something about the way her lips felt was different. I couldn't place it, but they were different. After eating a little dinner, I got set up and dressed for bed. When I came into the bedroom, I saw Taylor was sitting up reading a book, and when she saw me, she smiled. I did too, and went to my side of the bed, sitting next to her. I told her I was tired, and I immediately went to sleep, hearing her move around or mumble something to herself. A few hours later, something I don't know what I couldn't explain. It made me wake up. I saw the clock by the nightstand saying it was 1 in the morning. Then I noticed something else. Taylor wasn't in the bedroom. I saw her book sitting on her little nightstand with a bookmark sticking out of it. Then I noticed that the bedroom door was open. I then sat up and rubbed my eyes, wondering what had happened to her. Was she in the bathroom or getting a drink of water, and why it was taking her so long? I then stood up and made my way out of the bedroom and down in the hallway, quietly calling out Taylor's name, but wasn't getting any response from her. I then headed downstairs, and then I noticed that the lights were on in the living room, and I groaned under my breath, heading to go turn them off. When I got to the light switch, I turned around for some reason, before turning the lights off, and nearly jumped out of my skin. Standing there, facing the wall in the corner, was Taylor. She just stood there, not moving. I asked her if she was okay, but she didn't answer me. I walked up to her slowly, and when I was right in front of her, I turned her around and gasped. Her eyes were glazed over like she wasn't really there, and I immediately thought of sleepwalking, and then I switched the lights off before grabbing her and leading her back into the bedroom. When I laid her down on the bed, her eyes shut, and I looked at her confused about what I just saw. But I just shook my head and went back to bed. The next morning, I woke up and found she was gone again. I groaned, not wanting to deal with this a second time, so I headed downstairs. But I didn't find Taylor staring blankly in a corner. I found her making breakfast for both her and me. "Hello, sleepyhead, about time you woke up," she said, grinning, as she flipped some bacon over in a frying pan. And oh my gosh, it smelled good. I then noticed there was coffee for me in my cup, and I took it sitting down at the table, ready to drink it. But before I lifted it to my lips, I noticed it had some kind of silver liquid in it. But I didn't think anything of it at the time and started drinking it. A few minutes later, Taylor came into the room and sat 2 plates of food down on the table. One for me and one for her. As we started eating, I asked her if she remembered getting up late night, and she told me she didn't get up last night. I knew that was a lie, but I didn't want to press it. After eating, I told her I was going to do some work in the living room. So I took the last drink of coffee and headed to the living room and sat down on the couch. I started texting and doing different things on my phone, and then I yawned and noticed my eyes were feeling heavy and I felt tired. I couldn't go to sleep, not yet. I had so much work to do, but I couldn't help it. I felt my eyes shut and heard my phone fall on the ground. Because I didn't care, because I was sleeping. Suddenly, I jumped up on the couch into a sitting position and looked around. I saw my phone was sitting on the table, and that Taylor was sitting in the armchair, seemingly worried. I asked her what the problem was. She said she found me passed out on the couch and tried to wake me up, but couldn't. She was about to call 911, but I woke up before she could. I smiled, telling her I was fine, and that I was just tired of something, and she nodded and went back to doing what she was doing. Okay, something is going on. I don't know what, but something is happening to Taylor. I noticed the last few days she's been getting angrier and annoyed. Taylor acts like everything I do is wrong, like the way my hair looks, or the way I cleaned some stuff up, and then I noticed herself, like her appearance changing too. Her hair seemed to be messy, and her eyes seemed like they were turning red. But maybe I was just being too worried. But then a few months later, I was right. Something was wrong with her, and I knew it. But I didn't tell her, and went back to living a normal life with her, and I enjoyed it. And I was thinking about all of this. I was supposed to be sleeping. But I couldn't. Everything was running through my brain at 500 miles per hour, and then I managed to fall asleep. I woke up at one point because I had to use the bathroom, and I headed to it, and then noticed that the door was shut. I didn't think anything of it and opened it, and I was shocked at what saw there. Sitting on the floor on her knees was Taylor, and I could tell she was eating something, hearing the juicy sounds of whatever it was. She then turned around and I almost puked. She was eating a dead mouse. I saw its throat was missing, and there was blood all over her mouth and fingers. She then smiled at me, and blood seeped through her teeth, and I ran off feeling like I threw up, and then what I did, I threw up in the sink 2 times. I decided to sleep on the couch that night, not wanting to sleep with Taylor, after what I saw made me sick, thinking about it. And when she came down the next morning, I didn't talk to her. I wouldn't even sit near her, and I headed upstairs and looked around. I didn't see that dead mouse anywhere, and there wasn't any blood on anything. But then I saw it. There was a handprint of blood on the wall, and I gagged. Where did she even get that mouse from? Our house never had a mouse problem, and I felt bad for the mouse. After that, when she thought I wasn't looking, I noticed her eating different things like bugs, and once I saw her eating a little frog. After a few days, she came to me telling me she had to go check on her mom because she was at the hospital. Not the one she went to, but a different one, and she told me she had to go. I nodded, telling her to go and that. If she needed me to call me on her phone, and then she kissed me on the cheek and ran out of the house. Then I turned around like the time she was in the hospital all by myself, and fending for myself too, but I didn't mind. I then headed upstairs. I had a work project I needed to do, and thought being up in the bedroom would help me. I got all my work things out, like notebooks and pens, and then I noticed something there laying under the bed was a notebook or a journal, and I bent down and picked it up and saw that it had Taylor's name on it. Confused, I opened it thinking it was something she wrote during her time in the hospital. But it was something else different. It was a journal, and I started flipping through it confused about what was written in the book. Day 2. He caught my staring at the wall. The doctors told me it would happen, but I didn't think it would happen this fast. I flipped through more pages and stopped on one that made me feel sick. Day 14. I got a mouse from outside and took it into the bathroom, and then I broke its neck and started eating it, and then Scott caught me eating it, and I should have hidden it better. Then I flipped to the last page and saw something that made me also drop the book. Go to the Happy National Hospital. You have to save her. It's a matter of life or death. I then dropped the book and then grabbed my car keys, running out of the house. So fast I slammed the door very hard. I then got into the car and drove off. And a few minutes later I got to the hospital, and then I ran up to the door, and then I noticed that the door was locked. I looked into the hospital by the window and saw that the lights were off, and saw a sign on the door that said we were closed. Come back later. I growled under my breath and began to kick the door down, and then it busted open, and I ran into the hospital. I then ran down the hall shouting for Taylor's name, but I didn't hear it. I noticed that there weren't any other people in the hospital, and then I saw a door. It was a red door that said, "Do not enter," and I grabbed at the door and twisted the knob, seeing if it was unlocked, and it was. I saw stairs, but noticed nothing but blackness. So I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight and headed downstairs. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I saw a light switch and turned it on, letting the room flood with light. I saw it was a big place and there were metal tables in the room, and I could see there was something on every one of them. I then walked over to one, looking at the bloody sheet that covered it. Then I grabbed it with both hands and pulled it off and screamed. There, laying naked on the table, was Taylor, the real one. I noticed she had a few big holes in her chest and where her heart was. I was about to run when I felt a tight hand on my shoulder. I turned around and saw a doctor standing there with a glade on his face. And then he said he was sorry before he punched me in the face, and then I fell on the ground unconscious. I suddenly felt something hitting me in the face, and when I woke up I noticed that my shirt was gone, and there were doctors standing over me. "What's going on?" I mumbled, looking around the room. "I'm sorry, young man, but we're going to need your organs for our plans because it's needed," a doctor said. One of the doctors pulled out a big knife, and I could see it had blood on it. They then told me the whole story. They were cloning people, taking their organs, like their hearts and kidneys, and putting them into a machine that could clone them and make a person. And now it was my turn. I was about to jump up and say no, but I couldn't move. I felt weak, and then I felt the sharp pain of the big knife pressing into my side, like I was a chicken getting craved to eat. I turned my head and saw I was right next to Taylor. and her lifeless eyes weren't helping, and then I passed out as I felt them still cutting into my side.